Hey guys, in this video I'm going to tell you the difference between a template input variable and a template reference variable in Angular framework. So many times devs get confused between the two whenever someone asks a question about them. The difference is really simple but often confusing at times when there is a full-fledged interview going on. Both of these variables are different in every single way, that is, both semantically and syntactically. Let's talk about both of them for a little while before moving on to a small code example. But before we begin, I would like to request you all that if in the course of watching this video you feel that you liked it or learned something from it, then please take a moment and click on the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. This will really help me as a big encouragement to keep creating new videos on a regular basis. Alright, so a template input variable is always declared by using a let keyword inside a template. So when you are repeating a component or any other hierarchy of HTML elements using ngFor, then the variable after the let keyword will only be available to an individual instance of the element and its descendants, and not outside of that element, while Angular is iterating over the list which you have used with the ngFor. A template reference variable, on the other hand, is used to refer to the HTML elements or other components and directives. They point to the reference and can be used to access the properties of the elements. So I'm using VS Code and this is an empty Angular app. It is running on localhost port 4200. For this example, I'm going to create a component and then that component will be added on the HTML a number of times by using the ngFor loop, and you will see where the template input and reference variables are differently created and used. So first I'm going to create a folder in the app folder. Let's call it components, and then in this components folder I'm going to add the component for a person by using ng-gc. Let's add another bash terminal because the first one is being used to serve the ng app over port 4200. So components, and then person is the name of the component. Now in this person component I'm going to add some input properties, and these are going to be for the first name and last name of the person. So let's write the name of the properties, first name, and then there is the last name. And then in the HTML part of this component I'm simply going to provide the interpolation string values of the first name and last name input properties so that we will be able to see them. And I'm also going to enclose them in a span container. Now let's come to the app component. So I'm going to remove this paragraph, and then in the app component class I'm going to create a list of persons, and then that list of persons is going to be populated with some person objects, and after that we are going to create a loop on this HTML to create a list or to display the list of those persons on the page. So let's do that. So first I'm going to create the array for that list, and then I'm going to add the ng on init function, and inside this I'm going to set the persons list. Now in the HTML let's add a div, and then inside this div I'm going to add the ngFor loop, let person of persons, and then let's add the app person component with the values of the input properties, person dot first name, and then person dot last name. Okay, so I have saved everything, and hopefully, yep, the list of persons is being listed on the app component HTML. template. So right now over here, this person is the template input variable, and the scope of this person's every iterations value is going to be limited for every single iteration of this ng for loop. For the first iteration, the value of this person is going to be this object with the first name value of John and the last name value of Doe. For the second iteration, the value of this person input variable is going to be this one. First name should be Steve and last name should be Rogers, and so on. And the scope, as I have already told you, is limited to this div where we have actually used the ng4 structural directive, and we will not be able to access the person's value outside of this div. So that's the template input variable for you guys. Now I'm going to show you the example of a template reference variable, and it's pretty simple actually. The template reference variable can be used to get the reference for any HTML element, and for this example I'm simply going to add some inputs, or actually I'm simply going to add a single input, and then I'm going to also add a div as an output. So I'm going to use the template input variables to refer to them so that they can interact with each other. So let's do that. Alright, so let's remove this text portion from over here, and then I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it message, and after that let's also add a button. We don't really need a reference variable for this button because we are going to wire up its click event to do something, to set the message which we are going to type in this input to a container, an output container, and that container is going to be this div, and the reference variable should be attached with this div as well. Let's call it output, and then I'm going to add 2 line breaks to keep this entire list of names in next lines. Okay, so in this button I'm going to provide a click event, and this click event is simply going to set the outputs in a HTML with any message which is going to be typed in this input. So we need the message value, and let's type something over here. So when I'm clicking on set message, then this message is being applied over here. Now this message and this output is the template reference variable, and we will be able to access the values or the reference of items which these reference variables are pointing to anywhere in the template. So that means that we can access the values of these message and output inside this ng4 loop iterations too. So for every iteration we can access the message, and the value of the message variable or the element which this message will point to is going to be this one. So let's do that, but to expand this example I am also going to add another property or another input property to this person component. Let's call it message, and in the HTML part of this I'm going to add a line break, and then let's add the interpolation string for the message. And now in the app component HTML we can simply provide the value of the message input. Okay, so now the thing is, when I'm doing this, then whenever the this entire loop will run, then the current value of this message input is going to be set in this message input variable, which is at the starting point an empty string. So what we need to do is whenever the message will be updated, then we need to update this entire list as well. And you know what, I'm also going to add, I don't know, a single line break. Nope. Okay. All right, now it's kind of meaningful. We can see all the different names and messages kind of apart from each other. All right, so to do that, what I'm going to do is in this input, I'm simply going to add a key up event. So this key up event is going to be wired up with, with a 0. So I'm not actually wiring up any event with this key up or any event function with this key up event. The reason for that is we don't really need to do that, because whenever the key up event will execute, the Angular will simply update the state of this entire template depending on the values which we are using. So any value which we have added or any value which has been changed in this input is going to be updated across the template wherever it is being used. So when I am releasing the keystrokes, then whatever value currently is in this input is going to be applied for every other person component, because we are setting the value of the message input property with the value of this this input field. So yep, so this person is the template input variable, and this message which we are using outside of this div and inside of this div is the template reference variable, and that is the exact difference between both of them. So that was it for this video, guys, and I hope that you have understood the contents. But still, if you have any questions, then feel free to post them into the comments area just below, and I will make sure to reply to you. And let's meet in the next video. Till then, stay safe and have a great day.